I'm going to read to you a statement from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I want to see if you catch the same things in this statement that I do. So here's the statement. The universe is knowable. And I'm going to say it's a rough statement, okay? It's a little bit of a paraphrase. I don't know that I got every single word right. But the universe is knowable, and one need not appeal to mystical, magical forces to account for things, even if experience brings you something you can't explain. Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it is being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it is being driven by the laws of physics that we know and you have yet to learn, or we have all yet to discover. The universe is knowable, and that is an amazing thing. Now, I got that from the clip Great Atheist Bombs, and I'm telling you, I love catching people in just absolute nonsense, and when they're trying to thieve and steal and borrow from other directions. So let me just postulate this to you. Why did Neil deGrasse Tyson say, well, the universe is knowable? That sure sounds very personal. Now, I pointed out in the past that Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about basking in, the glory and the effervescence of the night sky, and I'm just telling you, he said the majesty of the night sky is the actual term he used. But here he's talking about the universe as if it's personal, as if you can kind of be chummy with it. Now, I know if you nail him down on this, he's not going to say that. But to sell you on this, he's saying the universe is knowable. And why does he cast it in that fashion? Is there a longing in people to connect with something vast and powerful and personal? Is he using a religious appeal to sell people on science? The Bible predicted this 2,000 years ago. It actually states that men will worship the creation more than the Creator. Tell me that's not what that sounds like. But let's also look at some assumptions that Neil makes with this statement. One of the assumptions is the universe is knowable, but yet he believes in evolution and chaos and, accidents created us all. So if that is the case, how do we know that the universe will continually be knowable? How do we know that it is always going to reveal itself properly so that it can be understood by the feeble human mind? How does that work together? So also this paints mankind as being able to comprehend anything that it sees, going further and further out. Now, this is really interesting because we haven't explored nothing but tidbits of the universe. And to make such an assumptive statement that we will always understand it, kind of paints a picture of humanity as being, super this or super that. And isn't that a little bit of assumptive about how the universe is actually going to work and reveal itself, being, knowable and all? But here's the one that really just got all over me, and he probably does this on purpose, but he says, just because, let me go back to reading it. The universe is knowable, and one need not appeal to mystical, magical forces. That right there was a stab at religion or anybody that believes in God. We don't need that. And he goes further and he says, to account for things, even if experience brings you something you can't explain. Just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it is being driven by mystical, magical forces. Here he's really pushing it in there. Even if you've had a spiritual experience, maybe you've seen an angel, maybe you've had a prophetic experience, maybe you've spoken tongues or something. And just because you can't explain it doesn't mean it's being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it is being driven by the laws of physics. Question for you. What are the laws of physics? Mystical, magical forces. I told you I thought Neil was was doing a bait and switch thing here. He is using aspects of religion, mystical, magical forces, God's creative ability, and he's trying to sell that, and he's he's trying to use electromagnetism, gravity, strong and weak nuclear force, mystical, magical forces to lure people in. He's like, now don't you be compelled this direction with it. Just come over here to physics. This is a word game. This is actually a word game. Don't believe in those mystical magic forces. Believe in our mystical magical forces. And you know that we don't have that figured out. None of the components that I just mentioned do we have figured out. Somebody might have a better description, but that doesn't mean we've got it. So you see, Neil deGrasse Tyson here is making a logical mistake, or he's at least appealing with an illogical fallacy on this point. He's equating explanation with mastery. No, just because you have a better description of something doesn't mean you have mastered it. So let's say, for instance, you and I are standing on one end of the football field, and we see somebody in the other end of the football field, and I go, hey, such and such is wearing a yellow exercise outfit. And you go, no, they're actually wearing a yellow tuxedo, because let's say your eyes are better than mine. But just because either one of us can better describe that way over there, does that mean we better know and understand it just because we have a better description? Again, he's kind of playing with terms here, especially with those mystical, magical forces. Gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak nuclear force. Just because we can describe a little bit better what's going on does not mean we've got it. Sure doesn't mean we've mastered it or control it. Now, obviously, as we learn things, we do get to shape things for our benefit, but so what? God said, here is the earth, go and conquer it. So another thing that I really wanted to point out is Neil, in this response that he was given, he just really reveals that he wants to be worshipped and that he wants to be, top dog in society, because like one of the ways he answers is like, it doesn't mean things are being driven by mystical, magical forces. It just means it's driven by the laws of physics that we know and you have yet to learn. There is always this, not always, most of the time when I watch Neil deGrasse Tyson's clips, there is down talking to people. It's like, oh, did you hear about this? Do you understand this part of, science? I don't know if you're really educated or not. So here's this. Just like he's talking down to the religious people. Y'all believe in mystical magic forces, but, let me talk down to you. And if he's talking down to you, that means he wants you to look up to him, especially when he, pontificates about higher things. And also, if we get rid of God, then there's nobody else to worship but the really, really smart people. So why at the very end of his statement does he again reiterate the universe is knowable? And that is an amazing thing. Is it because maybe we're trying to fill up with the knowledge? Is that what he's trying to do? That's the way he tries to fill himself up. And that is why he's telling other people to fill themselves up. But there's two problems with this. Number one, the more you know, the less you know. And Neil has stated as much in other videos. So the more I learn, it's like the more I don't know. So that's actually kind of humbling, and it's, it is fun to learn. It is very exciting to learn. But if you're using it to fill up and give you purpose, it's never going to be enough, because you're going to find that you know less than you did know. And one thing that Neil forgot to mention is that if the universe really isn't knowable, you can know about it, but know it, not quite. Because you see, science gives us data about the universe. It gives us data about life in a historical sense. Here's what we've tested. Here's what we know so far. Here are the facts as they are. But the universe never tells you what to do with those facts. It's still a guessing game. You might discover something that there is a new substance on Jupiter. Maybe we run into a substance that we've never seen before. But just because you run into this new substance doesn't mean the universe tells you anything about how to apply it to your life. Do you snort it up your nose or do you put it on your wounds? It doesn't tell us that. It is still us determining and figuring those things out. And if science doesn't speak to those things, it sure doesn't speak to the human condition. So instead of worshiping science, it would actually behoove you to follow after the Lord Jesus Christ and to let him fill you up rather than to indulge in things that are just going to kind of drive your pride, drive your intellect until you just kind of burn out and run out of gas.